I'm James Turk. I'm a director of the Gold Money Foundation, and I'm pleased to be here today with Edwin Vieira, the author of Pieces of Eight, which is a book that the Gold Money Foundation just recently republished. Edwin, it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
My pleasure to be with you, James.
Edwin, I can't tell you how many emails that I've received saying great things about the book, Pieces of Eight. I want to start by talking a little bit about that. I remember reading the first edition of it back in 1983, perhaps.
That's right.
And it was a great book, and now the new edition, which came out 20 years or so later. What's the background for Pieces of Eight?
Well, basically it derives from the Gold Commission that was held in the early 1980s. And a talk I had with Ron Paul, Congressman, really by accident. It wasn't in relationship with the Gold Commission hearings. And I asked some of the people in his office whether they happened to have a constitutional study of the role of gold and silver in the American monetary system. And they said no. And I said, well, how can you be having Gold Commission hearings looking to the present role when you're not looking back to see what the constitutional principles are? And someone said, well, if you think that's so important, why don't you put something in? So I did. I wrote a 60-page typewritten study called Constitutional Principles of the Monetary System. And it came in at the very end of the Gold Commission hearing, so I didn't have an opportunity to testify, and it's lost somewhere in the bowels of Congress, wherever they keep things of that nature. But then Ron Paul later suggested that that be published. Well, I thought it wasn't sufficient, so I expanded it, became a 380-something page book, to which Congressman Paul wrote an introduction. And then a number of years went by, and people started asking for it, and it was out of print. And I said, well, I'd collect a lot of other information on this, and let me do a more complete job. So in 2002, I came out with a second revised edition, which was now 1,700 pages long. And just last year and into this year, we've come out with a Gold Money Foundation special edition of it. So it's now available, actually on the internet through Amazon.
Yeah, we've received a lot of requests to have it available outside the U.S., but now it can be ordered through Amazon, and the name of the shipper is Auriga.
Auriga.
Auriga, A-U-R-I-G-A.
That's correct. They're the ones that handle that particular.
So the book will be available, or is available now, on Amazon through Auriga.
Absolutely.
And it can also be ordered through the Gold Money Foundation
Through the Gold Money
website,
Foundation, that's right. And then
well.
actually those orders I tend to fulfill, especially the international ones.
Okay. How did you develop this interest in the monetary aspects of money, the legal side?
Well, before I started studying law, I was a chemist, or at least I was studying chemistry. And in that particular discipline, you have a lot of time because things are cooking in the laboratory, so I spent time in the library. And I simply became interested in economics, read a great deal about economics. And one thing you know when you study economics is that money and banking are central to a free market system, positively or negatively. So when I went to law school, I was also interested in that subject, took courses in law and economics.
And this was at Harvard?
At Harvard,
yeah.
At Harvard. And one of the things I discovered was that they didn't discuss those matters. All of the important monetary decisions, banking decisions of the Supreme Court were simply not treated in any depth. And I began collecting information on that myself, simply because I was interested, essentially putting it away in a box. And then one day I had a client who was interested in bringing a test case on that subject. And now I began putting the material together to see what we could use in that particular case. And that led me by accident into Ron Paul's office, because the client knew some people who were working in that office. And he brought me in to talk to them during the time the Gold Commission hearings were being held. And one thing led to another, and the next thing I knew I was writing Pieces of Eight, the initial volume. And I just continued writing and lecturing and researching in this subject ever since. It's an essentially endless proposition.
How many articles have you written over the years?
Oh,
there must be dozens.
Dozens, yeah.
I've seen you on a number of different websites, News with the View.
News with View, and then of course these things are picked up,
yeah.
And they end up having lives of their own.
And they go viral.
Yeah, especially now, given the problems we're having.